if people join us a little late, we can share that. But yeah, let's get started.
Okay, great. Well, thanks everyone for joining us on this, in New York time afternoon. We're going to start with a brief round of introductions. And welcome, of course, to CECP's Accelerate community, Reinventing Purpose Communications. We're really thrilled that you're all here. We're just thrilled that you could make the time to be part of this group during this series of world-changing events. I know I speak for the team at CECP when I say that communications has never been more important, and finding a way to communicate that is sensitive to our current ecosystem is critical at this time. So this working group, this Accelerate community, is here to help us all do that. So we'll start off with a quick round of CECP introductions, and we're also going to introduce our speaker today. My name is Jackie Albano. I'm part of the communications and marketing team at CECP. I'm the Director of External Affairs. And Sarah?
Sarah Adams, Senior Director of Communications and Marketing at CECP, and yeah, with Jackie leading our efforts to really change the narrative on the role of companies in society. And a huge part of that now is corporate purpose, not only what companies are saying, but how they're living that. So we really are excited about this community. I think there's so much sentiment going on in the world today, and using this community to hone in on that and figure out, okay, what are best practices? Is there a checklist or a framework or an assessment that we can use to gauge our own work, but then also use that with the rest of our community so that we can scale this work up?
Thanks, Sarah. And Harper Woods, could you please introduce yourself?
Hi. And you'll hear a little bit more about me in a little bit, but I'm your speaker for today. I've been in PR for 25 years. See, it's Wednesday, 25 years. And so worked in government and small business, and now I have my business. I've had my business for 8 years and worked and our focus has been public relations, branding, messaging, and multicultural communications. So this year has been an amazing turning point for companies that especially work in multicultural communications, in helping companies define what their purpose is going to be and communicating that to their audiences. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But for the people that are introducing themselves, when you introduce yourself, if you could tell me one thing that you want to get out of today's presentation, I would greatly appreciate that. Thank you.
And we do have actually very specific questions for our participants. Don't worry, we'll get to the grilling in a second. But before we get there, we just wanted to give a quick overview of our Reinventing Purpose Communications. We're going to start with our meeting schedule. We have, of course, today, October 7th. And this will all come out. We'll make sure that you have all of this information. Don't worry about taking notes right this second. Our next one will be, and they will also be at the same time, so 2 to 3:30 Eastern time, December 9th, February 17th, April 14th. Oh my goodness, 2021. We're already there. February 17th, 2021, April 14th, 2021, and the final one will be June 6th, 2021. So you have those dates in your calendar. Next part that is quite wonderful about this community is that it comes with 8 hours of virtual strategic advisement. That means that your company should reach out to Sarah or myself and where we would set up time to meet with you and your communications team and really be available to offer audits on what you're doing, help with strategy, answer any other questions you may have. We're here to support your work, particularly as it applies to sort of reinventing how your company is communicating with purpose as its driver. So please don't forget to reach out to us on that. we strongly urge you to take advantage of those. And at the end, we'll be having, our goal is to have a deliverable that serves as a corporate purpose communications assessment, that as a company, you will be able to review and measure your company, assess your company. Are you doing, are you working on these best practices? Are you communicating in a way that has been determined to be strategic and thoughtful and responsive and sensitive in this new era? Next slide, please, Sarah. Okay, here we go. Your turn. So I'm going to just lead off the introductions here. I'm going to just call your name by the who's on top. So who is along my list? So first person up, Victoria. If you could please, the first one, lucky one. If you take a look at the screen, you'll see we need your name, your title, where you report into, one thing you hope to learn today, and what are your goals for this community?
Sure. So Victoria Martin. I lead the strategic content team at Pratt & Whitney, which is a part of Raytheon Technologies. One thing where you report into? My home. This lovely guest bedroom.
More the
Studio.
What team do you report into? Is it communications? Is it marketing? Is it something, another?
Yeah, so more broadly, it's the communications team, and we have centers of excellence. So it's the brand marketing center of excellence that I report into. So I'm actually very new in my role. I'm a month in. Prior to, so between signing up from the course and today, I switched jobs a little bit. So I'm very excited to be here. Really hoping to learn more about all of you and the different companies and industries that we have representation from in this course. And goals, I think in my role with content, a lot of times we're bombarded with so much, so many topics and things that could be really good pieces of content. And we kind of take the lead from our CSR teams on, what are their strategic initiatives, but beyond that, really turning that into something that the company is known for as like, here's what we stand for, and just how we do that. How do we cut through all of the noise and just really just be known for something, right? Whatever that may be. So those are, in a nutshell, my goals.
All right, thank you, Victoria. And Stephen, you're up next.
Hi, everyone. So Stephen Yan, I lead corporate affairs for Macquarie in the Americas. And firstly, Macquarie is, I guess, an Australian, sorry.
Oh,
Oops.
Lucy?
Did we lose him?
we lost them.
Oops, okay. We'll come back to Stephen then. Roland, you're next up.
Sorry, I had to find my mute button there. Well, my name is Roland Hume. I am a storyteller for Tata Consultancy Services. I'm not sure how familiar you are with Tata Consultancy Services, but I imagine reasonably we're one of the top 10 IT companies in the world. But rather uniquely, 50% of all the dividends that TCS creates actually goes back towards charitable foundations and work that TCS does in the community. So we have a huge corporate social responsibility department, which basically treats the people in need throughout the world as stakeholders in our company. So in the United States, we run STEM programs for kids who might not otherwise have the opportunity to study computer sciences and things like that. Across the world, we have adult literacy programs in India that have reached over 1 million people. We have STEM programs in Europe and England. So we basically do a lot within the community. And my role as a storyteller is to try and shine a light on that and bring attention to that, not just externally, but also to the 400,000 global employees we have. And so it's been a very interesting experience. to come back into this. I spent a couple of years outside of corporate America working for myself as a self-published author, but it's been a real trip.
Yeah. And Roland, just quickly, how many employees did you say?
TCS throughout the world has 440,000 employees, and in the United States we have about 43,000 employees.
Okay. Okay. Bigger than the town I went to college in. Great. Thank you very much, Roland. Stephen, you're back.
Sorry about that, guys. I'm using my iPhone, and someone decided to call me, and in trying to hang up on them, I probably pressed the wrong button. So great start. So yeah, Stephen Yan, I lead corporate affairs for Macquarie Group. Macquarie Group is essentially an asset manager investment bank. Where in the financial services industry, we have headquarters in Sydney, Australia. I'm Australian. I live in New York. I'm here in Williamsburg, but won't be for in a couple of weeks' time. Williamsburg, Brooklyn, I should say. And then corporate affairs really is the PR function, the media relations function, brand and marketing, investor relations, and we sit in, funnily enough, our financial management group. I won't bore you with why, but that's just how we're situated. And I report into our global head, who's in Sydney. And so, much like you guys, we're responsible for telling the story about our organisation. And really trying to raise our profile here in the Americas, I guess specifically in the US, where we have quite a big presence. We've got about 2,500 people. Our main hubs are here in New York and in Houston, Philadelphia, and a few other pockets around the country. I think the big thing for me is that we recently relaunched our purpose statement, and I kind of feel that we're in a position of advantage there because we put a lot of work into that, and our corporate culture is such that it's very bottom up, and it was very much something that was consultative with our people and our staff. And we're trying to really tell stories now about how we live our purpose. And I think that that comes at an interesting time in terms of, US politics, in terms of racial equity. And I feel that part of my job is actually being accountable to that purpose statement, whether it is making public statements, whether it is talking to our people, that we adhere to it because it's what we came up with organically as a firm. But it also holds us to those principles to help empower us to actually say things that we culturally as a firm aren't usually comfortable with, and address some of the big topics of the day. So that's really kind of my goals selfishly, but I'd love to sort of just get to know all of you guys and also get a sense of your challenges and approaches as well.
Great. Thank you, Stephen. Okay. Jennifer, can you introduce yourself, please?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. My name is Jennifer Griffith. I am one of the corporate social responsibility managers for Raytheon Technologies, sitting at the corporate office. Corporate communications office, rather. Just a little background. I come from the legacy Raytheon side and worked there for 15 years. We merged with United Technologies Corporation in April. So went from about 67,000 employees to 195,000 employees worldwide. So we're in the midst of merging everything from our strategy to all of our platforms, and that could be our focus areas, to our vendors that we use. What are we going to do? Who are we going to be when we grow up in 2021, when we're all merged together and hopefully out of a pandemic? So one thing I hope to learn today, you already said it, is the 8 hours of consultant. We're going to need that help in looking at the strategy and benchmarking. So that's would be super helpful just to start. And the goals for the community, and obviously beyond learning from all of you in the various industries that you come from, but also, we are such disparate companies, and how we did business and how we promoted content and brand out to the world. So now coming together, what should that look like? So it's coming up with that plan.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you very much, everybody. It's really wonderful to meet you all. I'm glad we're all in this together. Just a couple of other reminders. If you have any chats, something that comes up, or if you have any questions or something that you don't want to forget, just toss it in the chat. I'll be monitoring it, and we can always bring it up. Either, you know, one of us can answer it, Latricia can answer it, Sarah, or myself. You know, if you want to ask any questions in real time, please do. We will have plenty of time for Q&A at the end. But really what we hope for is an engaging dialogue, learning opportunities, and a chance to get to know all of you and hear about the work that you're doing. So Sarah, I'll turn it over to you now.
Okay, great. So we thought it would be a good idea to just level set at the beginning of any relationship, and we'll all be together for a year, so we do see this as a beginning of a relationship, is just to make sure we're all on the same page about what is corporate purpose. I think there's a lot of ideas about it, but there have been some really great thought leadership pieces over the past year or so that have outlined this. And essentially, it's the reason for being. It's why a company exists. But it's, you know, it's a little different these days. It's not just the making of a widget. It's how's that company solving a societal problem while creating value for the company. So it's that, you know, you've heard it triple bottom line or sustainable value or shared value. But the thing that really is central to this corporate purpose is how is a company meeting these unmet societal needs? So think about the skills and resources of a company and how is it addressing a societal challenge? And the beauty is in how they intersect. So a company is saying, what can I uniquely do? And then corporate purpose should be integrated through the strategy, operations, people-related efforts. It's not just the statement you put on your website and that you sort of set it and forget it. This is your North Star. This is what you think about all the time. When you have tough decisions to make, you go back to this. It's something that you know and you live. And it also should create measurable value. This isn't, again, it isn't something that's just surface level. It's something that you keep because it makes sense for your company and you see results from it. And it's, you know, I think it's really important that it's deeply held. I love the term deeply held common values. That's a Rebecca Henderson what is the name of the book? You'll hear me talk a lot about it. It's a corporate purpose in a world on fire. There's this chapter 4, which is required reading for this group. We'll share the link to it, but it's the idea that you didn't just come to this corporate purpose that someone locked themselves in a room, that it is something that the whole company agrees on and says, okay, I see myself in that. It's that idea that it's the deeply held common values and a collective sense of goals that you're all moving in the same direction beyond making money, you know, something that you're really working on together. The other piece of this is that the corporate purpose, you know, this is a good metric for you to think that it's significant, authentic, profitable, and serious. That, again, it's just really summarizing what I just said, that, you know, it's something that is making a significant contribution to society. It's not something that, you know, the average person would say, I don't know why you're focused on that. It's something big. Authentic, that there's roots of this in your company, that over time you can say, we've arrived at this topic, this issue area because of our history, our area of expertise. Again, someone would look at it and say, I get why that water company is focused on clean water, something along those lines. Profitable, there has to be an incentive. There has to be an incentive to stay at this, to keep working at it, and to keep that corporate purpose top of mind. And then just serious. And this is a lot of accountability, metrics, thinking about how you can set goals and incentives around it. So it reaches the highest level of the company, and it is reflected in performance indicators, KPIs, annual reviews, things like that, that it's woven throughout the company. There's lots of reasons to think about corporate purpose. I've outlined some of them here, but obviously, you know, this is the way a company today grows. This is when you look at the leading companies in the world today, you look at those brands, you look at the work they're doing, they typically have a strong corporate purpose. If they're doing things well, they're seen as a leading corporate citizen, you can usually go back and find that strong corporate purpose. There's how many bullet points on the business case on this, that You can think about it reducing cost. You know, if you're reducing your risk out there in the world, if you're doing things to control your carbon footprint, things like this, we've seen reduced costs. We've seen more efficiency in companies. Employee engagement. It's usually, you know, we've seen numbers off the charts when a company is a really strong corporate citizen. It's taking a stand on social issues. It's doing something to address challenges in society. The employees know it, and they are advocates, and they talk about it all the time. We've heard stakeholder demand. The customers, they want to know what a company stands for before they purchase a product. They'll vote with their feet, right? You know, we've seen the supply chain, this trickle down into the supply chain. Investors are asking for this. CCP does a lot of work on the investor side of things, and institutional investors, long-term investors are saying, "What's your corporate purpose? What do you care about? We want to know that you're going to be sustainable over the long term." Innovation. We know that when the company, the employees are engaged around this corporate purpose, where they understand how their work every day ladders up to this corporate purpose, they're more incentivized to be innovative. They will see an efficiency. They'll see a new product idea. They'll bring those ideas upwards. And then I think today, you know, thinking about what we've been through as a global community over the past 6 months, 7 months, this is where we are today. And corporate purpose is sort of in this perfect moment of being the thing that companies need to show up. And as I said, it's that North Star. If a company's wondering, how do I respond right now? Look back to that corporate purpose. It's telling you how to respond. And I love this phrase: we cannot be successful in a society that fails. So I think if you just remember that will help guide you. The company cannot exist on an island. It has to think about the society in which it finds itself. And if the world is failing around you, you're failing too. And that's why companies should care about this. I mean, we'll go through this throughout the life of this community. We'll think more about this, but there are steps. There are many steps to living a corporate purpose. Again, the work starts when you put pen to ink and figure out that the words in the corporate purpose. So, you know, we'll go through this, but I think it's just briefly, it's just figure out where you are. Are you there yet? Are you there yet on your corporate purpose? Are you being authentic about it? How does it connect overall with the whole company? Are you organized around your corporate purpose? Think about business units, and you know, we'll talk a lot about communications and CSR here, but what are the other business units that can take part? And then how are you delivering? It's going to be a lot of data, evidence, aligning business and societal goals, and then just live and die by that corporate purpose. You know, do you have ambassadors? So again, there's a lot here, but this is why we're coming together in this community, and we'll support you in the with your peers on these calls, and then in the one-on-one office hours. I just threw up some examples here. I think we'd also, you know, if we can, through these channels, share the company's corporate purpose. You know, I want you to be able to share that. If you want to sort of share it with this group and talk it through, but there's lots of examples of those great corporate purpose statements, and how, you know, interesting stories about how they came apart, how they came to be, and how they're living them. But you know, and I think we will be sharing lots of resources for you. The idea here is that there's some great thought leadership pieces, and there's some frameworks, and Latricia's here to talk to us about some of her work. In each subsequent call, we'll have another expert on sharing a framework or some thought leadership around this. And the idea, as Jackie said, is at the end to bring all that together and come up with that framework where you and other companies can assess your work. But yeah, I mean, someone mentioned the cutting through the noise, cutting through the clutter. There's a lot out there. There's a lot of ideas around what thought leadership is and isn't, and we will use some of our time to go through all of that. I think I'll just close with, this is the third communications community we've had at CECP so far, and the first two focus on employee communications, and this is very related to what we're doing here, and the topic of what Latricia will talk about today, that frontline employee, how do you engage your employees in this process. And I think, you know, looking back at over the last 2 years, I threw up here some of the key findings from one of our communities. and still very relevant. They've changed over time. I think the first bullet, the DEI, the diversity, equity, inclusion bullet, a couple of years ago, we were talking a lot about demographics and knowing your employee population, understanding where they're coming from, and making sure that your communications are targeted to them. You're not just talking to one amorphous group of employees, but understanding that they span ages and geographies and myriad other aspects. And so just understanding who your employees are, and then understanding what kind of messages and tools and all those things that they use. And we're thinking about it now, of course, more as equity and inclusion. I mean, are you saying things that will resonate with your employee population? Are you using the spokespeople? Are you using the messages? Are you using the tools that will appeal to across all of your audiences? Are you understanding their challenges and then meeting them there? I mentioned the cross business unit. This is so important to understand not only the communications aspect of this, but you have HR, you have your CSR, you have sustainability, you have investor relations, you have your CFO. I mean, everybody in the company now should be absorbing the work that you're doing on corporate purpose and corporate responsibility. So we're going to help you cross those business unit silos and make sure that they know why your work is so important. The employee voice, that's essential in all this, that it's not just the top-down communications, but you're letting your employees talk. And I can always tell when I look at a company's website or their social media and I see pictures of employees and quotes from employees and spotlights and awards. I want to see a human face when I look at a corporate website or look at social media channels. So that's definitely part of the corporate purpose, that this company is made up of people with values and passions. The flexibility piece was just, I think, knowing that none of your employees will agree on one way to engage with a company. So just giving them that flexibility. One great example is just the virtual volunteering that's going on. I mean, I think companies have just taken a step back and said, okay, I know we had guidelines before, but now you're at home. What can you do now to engage and give back? And we've seen some wonderful stories come out of that. But again, it's you gave them those guardrails of saying, this is our corporate purpose, now go live it. Go live it in your community the way that makes sense for you. And then global. I think we're all companies, even if we're headquartered in the US, and I'm so glad to hear we have a real great global representation on this call. We have to translate globally. We have to understand that the issues that we're talking about here in the US, we've got to make sure that we are focused on the needs of companies and regional offices and people in your supply chain all around the world. So just not thinking US centric, but thinking more globally. So those are, and it was kind of an interesting exercise to look back at 2 years ago, what we talked about, and think, okay, some things have changed, but a lot of the things are still very similar. So again, I look forward to working through this with you. We'll be on quite a journey together, and I think the favorite part for me is just working with each company and just learning more about what your challenges and opportunities are, and then after a year, seeing how much progress we can make together. So with that, I will pass it over to you, Patricia. So I think I will stop sharing, and you can take over the share.
I think there's pretty much everything, so we can go. Although, let's see if I can get my sharing.
Yeah.
All right, everybody can see?
Yes.
The 2 questions you hear on every Zoom call, can you see? And can you hear me? Okay, so everyone, this is very, very interactive. We're a small but mighty group, and I know what my voice sounds like, so I really want this to be an engaging dialogue, because I think the beauty of having such an intimate group is you feel safe to share. And so I'm going to look forward to us engaging and dialoguing throughout this whole presentation once I get it started. Okay. Okay, everybody can still see? All right. Okay, so again, a little bit about me. been in the industry for 25 years, and the rest you can read. The Aspiring Golfer is helping with my wellness because it allows me to go hit something and be okay with it and try to hit it really far. And it really does take out a lot of stress that you can have being cooped up in COVID. Because as Sarah said, does anybody remember what January and February felt like? When the only care you had was, how many flights do I need to take this year to keep my rewards? Do I get my perks? That is really what I was thinking about in January. I was mapping out my trip so I could keep my A-list status. And now we're in a whole different place. Being an African-American female, as you can see, the month of May and June were a complete blur because we were already dealing with the impacts of COVID and having a public relations company. When COVID happened, you didn't know where your clients were going to land. Were they going to shut down? Were they going to thrive? Were you going to lose? Were you going to gain? And crisis communication came in, and so, okay, a lot of my clients shifted to crisis comms. Then May happened, and we had the culmination of the incident in Central Park and the death of George Floyd, and that added a whole new layer to everything because companies kind of stopped in their tracks and said, we need to do something, and we need to do something now. Can we get somebody to help us? And so if you were an African-American public relations professional that dealt with crisis comms and multicultural communications, the entire month of June was either on client calls, helping your colleagues and their clients, being on webinars, giving presentations, talking people off the ledge. And it was like, this is where we were. We were just, what has happened to put us on the ledge? So I have this photo to remind us of where we were, but to remind you, this presentation may be a little edgy. We might push through some barriers. It may feel like we're on the edge of the cliff, but I promise you we will not fall. We will pull you back before anything happens, but I want you to feel comfortable taking this walk with me today. Can everybody agree to that?
Yep.
Okay.
Sounds great.
Because I can only see so many nodding heads. So especially if you're not on camera, I need to hear you say yes, because you're agreeing to step into the vault with me and your colleagues that you're going to be with for a year, and you're going to share the good, the bad, the ugly, so we can make it all fantastic. Right?
Sounds good.
Okay. So again, there was once a time when there was no such thing as COVID, but there was always a thing of racial injustice. So they kind of went hand in hand. And with that, you've heard a lot of media say that there were two pandemics that happened at once. One that had already been established but silent, and then one that manifested itself last December, the coronavirus pandemic and the racial pandemic. And what the perfect storm was, while we've had racial injustice events and incidents before, you did not have them in a place where nobody could walk away from it. When George Floyd happened, most of the states in the United States were on lockdown of some kind. And so you weren't going to an office where you could turn it off for 10 hours a day. You weren't sending your kids to school and having that respite for 10 hours a day. You were in your home, on your computer, watching your TV, watching your social media feeds, and it was a non-stop loop of watching the video of how George Floyd died. And that non-stop loop took people to a very different place than they had been before. And that is what made this moment different than the moments that preceded it. It is yet to be determined if this moment is actually a movement, and you're going to be a participant in whether it becomes a movement. So right now, I'm still categorizing it as a moment. So from there, companies had two different approaches. You had companies that rushed through a response. This has happened. We have to get something out. We have to be one of the first companies to get something out. We have to show our customers that we are with them. We are standing with them. We're standing by them. So it was a very swift reaction. And then you had some companies that were like, we're going to just kind of take our time. We're going to think through this process. We're going to go through the steps that we would do with anything of this magnitude, and we're going to come up with our statement and our actions, but we're going to do it at a different pace. You also had companies who've done neither. And they are on the thought process of, it really doesn't concern us directly, so we're not going to do anything. We're not going to respond. We're not going to make a statement or enact practices because we really don't feel this issue impacts us. And it doesn't sound like any of those companies are represented today, so that's great. But there are some companies that are still trying to figure out where they fit in this time in history, and some are still on the sidelines. So some companies responded in a myriad of ways, and you might see some of these in your company. So if your companies have participated in any of these, please feel free to weigh in and say how they've worked for you or not worked for you, or where you see this particular practice going. A lot of companies created a task force to deal with racial justice, social injustice, or things of that nature. Did any company start a task force for the first time? Stephen? Your company did?
Yeah, we established a working group that our management committee consulted with to really sort of tap into the voices of our Black colleagues and people of colour. We already had an employee network group, a synergy group that helped us along the way in terms of some activities. But the working committee really was helpful in driving a lot of initiatives early on.
Okay, very good. Anybody else create a task force?
So I'm looking at a little bit from the outside for Reinventing Technology. So we started off with more of a town hall.
Okay.
That ended up being a global town hall. So many employees could voice their concerns, what's happening currently in the environment. And it was more of a listening tour, and then it turned more broadly into a CEO listening tour with more focused groups, and then that rolled into task force. So we still are in the development phases of our full ED&I plan. We didn't want to roll something out super quickly, so we're working with various consultants, and the plan should be together here soon.
Okay. And for either Stephen or Jennifer or anybody who hasn't spoken yet, how did you find, and this is kind of a double sword answer, how did you find the responses of your employees of color to come in?
Yeah, look, it's a great question. I think it was Jennifer that was speaking before. We also did a town hall, but we also did small group conversations, and those were really revealing. I mean, yes, I'm not sure if any other organizations did this, but there were sort of closed group forums for Black employees only and for others to listen in on. And I won't go into sort of the stories of trauma and those things that were talked about, but when we also asked some of our Black employees to help us get things right, help us develop initiatives, we had to recognize that that was an imposition on them as well, in that, we're sort of saying we want to do the right thing, but we didn't ever say, hey, this isn't your day job. So there was a discomfort there. It was something we recognized we had to do, because obviously we had to drive this forward the right way and with the right people. But I think, some of those colleagues weren't shy about saying, this is something we've lived and breathed, every day, and you're sort of turning to us now, and it's great, but this is a lived experience for us forever. So there was that sort of aspect to it, which I'm not sure if you were sort of alluding to, but present for us.
And Stephen brings up a really, really great point. Again, I talked about the months of May and June being kind of trauma-filled for African-American employees and just Black people in general. But what he said was something that was very, very important. A lot of Black people during that time felt like, at this stage in the game, companies should know how to create these avenues, create these resources without us telling you how to do it. And it was a sense of, we are emotionally drained. Please don't ask us to do anything else. We're hanging on by a thread right now, just being here at work. And so to go above and beyond to educate the masses on how to talk to Black people and how to treat Black people, we don't have it in us right now. And you saw that kind of play out in your affinity groups or employees just really being silent. And town halls are great when you're rolling something out, but when you're wanting to get to the heart of how an impacted group of employees feel, a small group setting is absolutely going to be your most impactful way to go, because they feel safer. And they feel that whatever is said there will not be used against them at another time. And they feel almost empowered to be a part of the solution, because putting them on a Zoom call with 500 people, they're going to sit there and say, well, somebody's going to get to it. Somebody's going to say it. I don't have to do that. And I don't have to put myself out there. But if you put them in a setting where they feel that they are protected, but they have a purpose, you're going to drive them to be more engaging, and you're going to get your best responses out of them, because it is something that they have dealt with for a long period of time, and you have to kind of get through the layers of trauma to get to the true engagement. Affinity groups, I'm pretty sure all of your companies have them, and you have utilized them for years. I think some affinity groups feel that they're tapped into for certain parts of the year, Black History Month, Hispanic Heritage Month, LGBTQ Pride Month. And so it's really utilizing them 365 and making sure that they feel purpose every day. And I think some companies still can work through how to make that happen. New hiring practices is a question I get a lot, especially dealing with communications professionals like most of you are, because I get calls from my colleagues all the time. We can't find diverse professionals in this field. And I saw a really interesting meme on Instagram, and it's like, if Beyonce can find diversified people in everything that she does, what is our excuse? You know? And so I really try to guide people in one of three ways. You really have three options of diversifying your communications team or your teams overall. You can grow your employees by having internships placed strategically in universities that represent the diversity that you want to achieve, and then create a kind of grow your own professional program where you're feeding them from their internship straight into your employee base. You can pilfer where you see strong talent at another company. It has been done. You know, you can woo them over to your company that way, or you can partner. And you can partner with organizations that have the diversity that you're looking for so they can guide you in where you need to go. And it's interesting that when I talk to people about this, there's low-hanging fruit that they've never thought about when they think about recruitment. They have thought about HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities. They've thought about student affinity groups, either, you know, PRSSA or the Hispanic Communications Group or whatever's available on their campuses. But they don't think about things like the Asian American Chamber, the Hispanic Chamber, the Black Chamber. These are organizations that companies should have business relationships with anyway, but it's also a great way to diversify their programs and their partnerships that could lead to great recruitment. So those are low-hanging fruit. To be a member is not a lot of money for a lot of these companies, and it's a great way for them to enhance their brand. Webinars, we kind of talked with the CEO town halls. I know a lot of companies were doing that, and donations. A lot of companies came out and said, we're donating to the NAACP, or we're donating to the Urban League or the Black Lives Matter movement. And that's great to an extent, but again, remember that your employees are the best gauge of what organizations are on feet on the ground and moving the needle in the communities where you serve. And so talking to your employees about where they think donations should be made, where they think volunteer hours should happen, is a great source of intel on how to make a purposeful statement in that realm. And then of course, everybody did the company statement, because that was the low hanging fruit of the day. And 87 companies on the Standard & Poor's 100 Index issued a statement after George Floyd's death. 87 out of 100. That's a tremendous percentage, and that's just the Standard & Poor's 100. But I fielded a lot of calls during that time frame from companies like, you know, what can we do? What can we say? We want to get something out. We want to be like them. We, you know, and again, it goes back to, are you going to be the hare? Are you going to be the tortoise? And how purposeful are you going to be in the communications that you outline?
So when I was at corporate, also with Reinventing Technologies, I know the plan that was put together amongst our leadership team was very thoughtful and purposeful, in that, yes, our CEO made a statement to employees that was then also available on our website externally, but a lot of I think it's like an 18-month plan, a lot of the plan that was put together, the bulk of the time is really being spent internally, and really taking the time to listen to employees, to implement training, to really make some changes internally before going out broadly and saying we're donating, you know, $50 million and all of that. And it makes us look, yes, we're addressing it, and we may externally, I think it may not be seen like we're doing a lot, but I think doing it from the inside out, it made me really proud to know that it's not something that we're just going out and saying that we're doing, but really taking the time to do it right. So yes, I mean, I think speed, I think Nike also did a really great job. Like, I think there are companies that were very vocal about it. And then there are some, you know, that might just be trying to approach it in a smart, thoughtful way.
Absolutely. And you have to look at where your priority is. And I mean, it's different for a retail company than for a technology company, for sure. But I think every company has to decide what's going to be best for them, because definitely including your employees and starting from the inside out is a great and solid way to go. Because companies that have done it the opposite way have sometimes found themselves on the wrong side of their employee base. Because
and echoing what Victoria said, coming from that legacy Raytheon side, our previous CEOs never address any controversial issues. So with our new company, new business, new CEO, it was refreshing to see that he was taking a stand and he was going to announce it not only internally but externally. And we're seeing very progressive movement, which I've never seen before. So that in and of itself was impressive to me, and seeing more CEOs like that, showing more of a standing up against controversial issues, whatever they could be.
And I think, again, starting from the inside out is the best way to go for a lot of different reasons, because a lot of companies who did not do that would put out a statement and employees would say, but that's not what we live and breathe every day. And your employees are your best advocates. They are your best cheerleaders, and they're also the ones that will hold you to the fire if something's not right. And you think that the number of hours in a day that an employee spends working, you really need to take care of your employee base first. I think after that, it's up to a company to determine where they go. Are they notifying stockholders? Are they notifying consumers? Are they notifying vendors? When companies have told me, well, our company's not diverse, so it's not a problem for us, I responded, okay, but have you looked at your supply chain? Have you looked at your end user? Because even if for some reason you feel that your company is not diverse, that's truly not the case. And you're only looking at a very small piece of a larger pie. But making sure that you're right with your employees has to be one of the first things that you do, because they are your most valuable asset.
And I'm wondering, Victoria, too, if you can give updates on your progress to externally and internally, of course, but that you have this 18-month plan and you're doing the good work, and that to sort of tease it out to say, you'll see more from us. I think I love the phrases that people are using of, this is a journey. We'll never be finished. Mm-hmm. Well, but to say to the world that we're working on this, just so that they don't see, because I think people make assumptions. They don't see the things they want to see, and they make assumptions that you're not working on it. So any opportunity to say, you don't have to give the specifics, but just say we're working on it.
Right. Because I think as long as people see movement and it's positive movement, they will give you grace. They will give you grace. And so the example that you see before is what happened with Adidas, which kind of ties into the opposite of what Victoria was saying. They came out with a very bold statement that they were against racism and that they were going to be thoughtful and they were going to work on change. And then about a month later, their head of HR resigns because Adidas employees came back and said, that's really great that you said that, but that's not what we're living every day. We are not a diverse company. We're not a company that is engaging multiple values and multiple cultures, as you say in our external statements. And so that led to the head of HR at Adidas stepping down. So when you're thinking about what your purpose statement is going to be, you always have to make sure, is it something that your employees can stand by and say, yes, we live this, we can live this, we can be this every day? Because if not, it's just words. And this is a time in our society where words are no longer enough. You also have to look at your history. And for some companies, you have to look at if there's anything you need to atone for. Because again, society will give you grace up to a point. And we have a musical interlude. They will give you grace, but you have to tell them what you need grace for. So when NASCAR came out with their statement that they were banning the Confederate flag, it went a lot of different ways. Definitely there were people who thought it was long overdue, the disassociation with the Confederate flag. But NASCAR has a very intricate history with the Confederate flag. So it really enraged some longtime NASCAR fans. And so you have to look at what you have done historically to lead you to where you are today. And so your purpose statement may have to say, we know that in the past, we had practices that were not inclusive. We had practices that were discriminatory. And we have seen the error of our ways, and this is how. And this is why we are making a stand to be better now. You just can't go from A to Z and expect everybody to applaud your effort. You have to show how you made that change, what brought you to this change in decision-making, change in strategy, change in positioning, so that your purpose is authentic. Because if not, people are going to think you're just really kind of going with the flow of what's taking place now, and you're not leading from an authentic place. Any comments on NASCAR? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was a very interesting call that they made there, because I think the almost opposite comparison is a company like Nike, just, in the vein of Adidas, but Nike's always been one to wear its values on its sleeve, and people are really clear about what they stand for. Obviously, their alignment with a lot of social justice issues, and more recently, Kaepernick, sorry. So for them, they're fulfilling that purpose, right? In terms of what they do, they're not gonna. People don't generally turn and go, throw out or burn their Nikes, because they know what they stand for when they buy them, as opposed to other retail brands. So for NASCAR, I think it was brave, but a pretty tough call and tough decision. But I think they sort of understood that times are changing.
And actually, people did burn Nikes.
Yeah,
they did. And the head of the Women Olympics lost her job because of it. Because social media is not kind.
Yeah.
And it has a very long memory. And
yeah. Sorry, I was going to say, and that's one of the tough calls, right? So when we fulfill our purpose and adhere to it, you're naturally going to alienate some people that don't share those values, right? So it's a strategic decision to firstly formulate that purpose, but also when you enact on it or execute on it, then that is collateral damage that is part of your risk management.
And in your roles for your companies, you have to be your company's conscience. And you have to be that voice that says, we're going to make a decision, and it may very well alienate some people. We may get some bad press, but in the long term, it's the right thing to do. And you have to stand by that. So Nike took that stand that, yeah, we're going to lose some customers. They're not going to like what we're going to do. But are we okay with that? And for them, it paid off in the long run. But even on something not as kind of in your face as the Confederate flag, there are companies that had to look at their past business actions that are more internal than external, but still atone for them in their purpose statement. Things like discriminatory hiring practices or discriminatory lending, you know, things that aren't going to make the front news of the Wall Street Journal, but you know in your company's heart that it's something that you did and you have to atone for it. So it's being that conscious and being that voice that will help you guide your company on the right side of history. But in the end, you have to be able to determine what is your why for your purpose statement. And it goes back to what Sarah was presenting earlier. You have to know what your why is, and you have to build from that why. And in that case, it's very different than a generic company statement where you're like, you know, we're here to build widgets. Okay, so you build widgets, but your purpose statement is, what is your why? What's going to inspire you? What do you live for? How are you going to impact society? And it's not with a widget. So building your purpose statement from your why is the second most important thing you need to do after you engage your employees. But improving diversity requires knowing your why, being intentional about your why, and improving communication on the why. And the biggest thing that people miss about diversity and inclusion is people want to be heard and people want to be valued. And they want to be valued as they are. So it's not asking them to assimilate to something else. It's accepting your employees as they are, hearing them as they communicate, and noticing where they are. And that's the whole thing about inclusion, because diversity is being asked to dance, and diversity is being asked to the dance, and inclusion is being asked to dance. Now, engagement is being asked to sit on the dance committee and help to plan the whole thing. So it's different levels of acceptance and acknowledging your teams for who they are. Now, this goes back to what Stephen mentioned earlier when he talked about the smaller focus groups. Effective communication is 20% about what you know, but 80% about how you feel about it. And that's why people do not like to have diversity conversations, because we don't like how it makes us feel. We don't like to talk about race because we don't like how race conversations make us feel. Somebody's going to feel like they're a racist. Somebody feels like they're discriminated against. They don't think it comes out good for anybody in the end, so they avoid them at all costs. And that's not going to get us anywhere we need to be. We need to be comfortable having emotional conversations, because emotions aren't a bad thing. It shows us what we're passionate about. It shows us what we're going to take a stand on. It lets us know what we're enthusiastic about, and things that we're like, that doesn't really excite me, but okay, it excites you. But if we live in a place where we don't share and we don't communicate and we don't show emotions, are we working in a place that's authentic? And your employees spend the majority of their day with you. So are they able to authentically be themselves in their workspace? And when you're creating your purpose statement, there's nothing wrong with including things that your company is passionate about, that they want to take a stand on and fight for, because those are the purpose statements with teeth. Those are the purpose statements that make people stand up and say, that's the company that I like. that's a company that I support, because I know what they're passionate about. I know what they're going to go to the wall for, and I know the action that they're going to take because they told me and I believe them. Those are the purpose statements that we want. So, you know, corporate social responsibility, CSR, people are like, oh, that's a phase. And then 2020 happened and they're like, okay, that's not a phase. That's like huge now. And so CSR is getting a resurgence now thanks to COVID and racial injustice, because they are both equally changing the narrative when it comes to corporate social responsibility. COVID showed us that there are disparities. There are disparities with frontline employees. There's disparities with different tiers of employees with their access to healthcare, access to education, access to nutritious food. So through COVID, we saw that all healthcare is not equal. And it's not determined by what healthcare plan you have or don't. That the healthcare that some people get in some countries and in some communities is quite different than their neighbors across the street. So consumers, as Sarah mentioned earlier, they vote with their feet and they judge you with their pocketbooks. And they want to know where you stand on the issues that are important to them. And through social media, they are not afraid to tell you what those issues are. And they want to know what you're going to do about it. What are you going to do about the environment? What are you going to do about racial injustice? What are you going to do about access to healthcare? And through your purpose statements, you can provide them that trust and assurance that these are things that are important to us. This is how we're going to fight for them. And you can hold us accountable by doing these things. Because we are at a stage in our society, in a stage in time where consumers want action. They want visible action. And when I say consumers, I don't just mean externally. Your employees are consumers as well, and they want action. They want to know that the company that they give so much time of their life to is taking a stand on issues that are important to them. So have you checked in with your employees on what issues are important to them? Anyone? Anyone done a recent poll with their employees to talk about societal issues that they may be concerned about?
Oh. We haven't. I don't think so much given a thing. I think we have certain issues that employees feel very strongly about. I mean, when everything horrible happened with Floyd George and everything earlier this year, we spent a lot of time sort of talking to employees about that and trying to highlight that as an issue. And I think we were very aware of like how we should respond as a corporation, how we should respond with employees. And I think some of the stuff that we did as a company was kind of cool. We had leadership say to employees, if you want to say something on social media, as long as you make it clear that you're not speaking on behalf of the company, you should feel free to do that, which I thought was very cool. I mean, I've been at companies before which, you know, they have a lot of attention focused on individual employees' social media presences and stuff, and it was very nice to have that as a message from leadership to say, like, speak with your conscience rather than thinking about, you know, whether there are going to be any ramifications in the company. So that was a good thing from our side.
I'm sorry, my computer is like making all kinds of sounds. Thank you, Roland. And I think those are great examples, because yes, after George Floyd's death, a lot of companies wanted to take the pulse of where their employees were, but you also want to think outside of just that, because there may be issues that are not as in headlines that are of great concern to your employees, like climate change. There's kind of a default sometimes by HR to focus on, certain awareness months, but there may be a deeper way to do that. Like October is breast cancer awareness and domestic violence prevention. Both of them very big issues, especially here in America, but your employees may have an idea of how they can use their efforts to make a bigger impact on issues like that if it's something that's very strong to them. So maybe working through affinity groups or working through HR, you can get a sense of what your employees really feel passionate about, and maybe making kind of additional, maybe mini purpose statements that say, our employees are they're very impassioned about making an impact in these areas. They are wanting to make an impact on sustainability or social justice or healthcare awareness or something. But that might be something that companies want to do to make purpose statements that really resonate with their employees.
I've seen something cool where maybe in December, like a month of giving, that companies will ask employees, what are the 5 causes you want us to give additional funds to this month? Mm-hmm. So they'll do the survey, they'll get the 5 issues, and then probably the accompanying nonprofits. And so it's a good temperature taking of the employee population every year, every quarter, whatever, to figure out what are the issues that we care about. Yeah, there's the strategic issue the company has, but then that's to that flexibility that I talked about. You want to make sure that you have the flexibility to say, this is what our employees care about, and therefore our company cares about.
Exactly.
So and for Legacy UTC company, they have a completely open matching gift policy. So you can donate to any organization that you want. So I'm currently doing a deep dive for the past year or so of all the employees and what percentage of employees donated what kind of type of dollar amount to the various NTE coded causes to kind of gauge versus doing a poll of what kind of causes employees are really passionate about.
And then Jennifer, when you have that information, that's something that you can promote externally on your website, either on, I don't know if you have a place on your website for corporate social responsibility, but you can say, these are the areas that are of importance to our team and where they have donated their time and money, and just kind of, list the different areas that have received donations by your employees, because then that's telling your story and it's showing that we're walking our purpose, we're living in our purpose.
Good idea. Great, thanks.
Yeah, it's just to add to that, and I wish my colleague Laura McMillan was on this call, but she's in Sydney, so time zones didn't permit. But she's part of our philanthropic arm, the Macquarie Group Foundation, and we've always taken an employee-led approach. So we're not really in the business of we provide grants, but we don't say we're doing the opera for a branding opportunity or whatever. Everything we do is led by employees, whether that's matching the proceeds that they donate. And we do that. We've done that forever. But also, if they're on a board or if they're providing real sort of sweat equity, then that's something we support as well. And then we also have a month where we celebrate the foundation. We call it Foundation Week. It's actually kicking off in a couple of weeks, where we actually do a 3-for-1 match, and everyone sort of gets additional visibility around the activities that they're planning with their teams individually. So we've always taken, and it's part of our culture to take a very sort of grassroots approach to these things. So it's not something we're pretty proud of, but we feel is the best way to really meet community needs as well as our staff interests.
Now, Stephen, do you promote that somewhere on your website? Because information like that, you know, if I'm an applicant and I'm looking at an offer from your company or and engaging in against another company, that might be what sways me.
Yeah, we do promote that, and yeah, we're very proud of it. So that's something that we do feature on our website.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I got 10 slides left, and I know Sarah's going to give me the hook really in probably about 10 minutes to let me fly through because I talk too much. Corporate responsibility, corporate communications should be working hands in hand. It should not be relegated to some corner somewhere. They should be both very visible. I hope in your company you're answering to the CEO or somewhere in that realm and not 5 levels down, because it's corporate social responsibility and corporate communication has to be ingrained in everything that you do. So hopefully you're elevated at a high enough level that if you need to get to the CEO quickly, you can without going through a lot of levels. Just some ideas on an effective purpose statement. You know, we talked about authenticity, having a clearly defined purpose and a very strong call to action, atonement, alignment with company values. And if you've not looked at your company values in quite some time, might need to take them out and dust them off and see if they still resonate with what our society, where our society is today. They have to be proactive and sincere and have the willingness to right a wrong and do the right thing. Be bold, broad thinking. You want to plan and dream globally and act locally. Be transparent. And as many people have said today, employee led. So thumbs up because everybody seems like they are there. We talked about reinventing the purpose statement to what it was then to what it is now, and Sarah really addressed this very well, so I won't go into this. A couple of examples of playing it safe. Disney, very nice statement. We stand against racism. We stand for inclusion. We stand with our fellow Black employees, storytellers, creators, and the entire Black community. We must unite and speak out. Very nice statement, right? Tells you what they will stand for, gives you warm and fuzzies. And this was Ben and Jerry's. It's bold. It leaves nothing on the table. So sometimes you have to take that bold approach. They also followed this up with a very detailed purpose statement that had call to actions on a lot of different levels, including reaching out to legislators and, you know, and encouraging employees to vote and things of that nature. I thought this quote was really, really great from Archbishop Tutu. If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. Or if an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse and you say that you are neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality. Again, and many of you have given examples of how you have engaged your employees throughout this. So I just say on that, keep up the good work and keep doing what you're doing. Your employees are your baseline. They will let you know if you're walking the walk or if something is wrong. So companies that do not lead with their employees, they're going to be held to the fire for it. So if you find ways to make your employees feel like they are a part of the process every step of the way, not just once the policy is enacted, but in the creation, in the very early stages of policy creation, all through vetting it out into the rollout, you're going to have employees who feel like they can champion this for you in the community with other employees, and they will be your biggest advocates. Is this a movement or a moment? we're at a fork in the road. I think companies that have professionals like you guys that are working to make it more of a movement than a moment will get society where it needs to be. My fear is there's not enough of you out there. And instead of a movement, we're going to have just another moment. But this is a fork in the road, not just for the United States, but the world. How are we going to be the societies that we need to be moving forward? How are we going to be the organizations, the communities, the countries where everybody feels that they have a place and everybody feels that they have a voice? This is the fork in the road that's in front of us right now. So as CSR, as communications professionals, you are not only the conscience of your companies, you are the heart of your companies. And so you have to wear those badges proudly, and you have to push your company to be on the right side of history. Alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. And this is from a woman who could not see the world as it was, but she saw the world as it was to her. So we need to create the world that we need to see today. That's it.
Thank you,
Latricia.
Thanks, Tricia.
That was great. So we're just gonna, we have just a few minutes left, but let's just open it up for some quick Q&A. Anybody have anything? I mean, I have questions myself, but I'd love if any of our companies have anything they'd like to ask. All right, I'm gonna get it started because Roland touched on this before about employees and social media.
Oh, I'm excited to listen to this.
Yes, okay, thank you. And this has come up before many times in when CECP is talking to companies. But so Latricia, what are your thoughts on employees and social media? What are the benefits? What are the pitfalls? Should companies provide guidance as they did, as Roland was mentioning? Is privacy an issue? I mean, we're living in a social media world where
Living in a social media world, and I know when social media first came out, companies were terrified, and they were, and the guidelines were like, don't even look at your phone on your lunch break. I don't think we're there now, and we can't be there now, especially when you have employees working from home and working remotely. I think you have to trust your employees. If you have done right by your employees will do right by you. And if you haven't, you need to be okay with what they have to say. And they may post something. I mean, as long as what they're posting is not a lie or incorrect, you have to be willing to accept what your employees are saying on your behalf, because it's not like they're not saying it orally. It's not like they're not calling up their friends and telling them about how they feel about work. They're doing that. They're just doing it through a different medium. So I think gone are the times to have restrictive social media policies. I think employers should be free to empower their employees, because what you will find is they are going to promote what they love about working for you, and that's going to benefit you greater in the end.
Be advocates if you're doing right by your employees.
If you're doing right by your employees, they will be your strongest and best advocates every single time.
Thank you.
Well, I know it's 3:30. I want to respect people's time. I think what we'll do is we've recorded this. We will we'll share some key takeaways. We'll share some of the resources that we provided through this, and and will get us ready for the next meeting. So expect to see some emails from us. And we thank you so much for being here and for your engagement. This has been fantastic. And thank you to Latricia.
Yes, thank you.
Thank
This has
you,
been really
everyone.
great.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
Latricia. Nice to meet you.
Thanks,
Nice.
everyone.
Talk
See
again soon.
you in December or so. Thanks, everyone.
So good. Bye now.
Stay safe. Stay safe.
You too.
Bye.